Fabian McDonald, experiences during the Australian Museum website rebuild.
Afternoon, everyone. Can all hear me okay? It's all good? All right, cool. So, my name is Fabian McDonald, and as the title of the talk implies, I'll be discussing the experiences during the recent Australian Museum website rebuild. So, a little bit about me first. I'm design lead at a web agency based in Sydney called the Interaction Consortium. We're primarily focused on custom digital platforms for the museum and gallery sector. And first off, I'll let you in a little secret. I'm not an accessibility expert. But before you all get up and leave, I can tell you that I'm a web developer and designer with 15 years experience, and I do care about accessibility. My background is graphic design, and when I was studying, while the internet wasn't exactly new, it didn't influence everyday life like it does today. Web design was one course, and most of that was spent learning Flash. So that probably gives you an indication of how old I am. As such, like a lot of web developers and designers, I'm mainly self-taught, learning through trial and error, digging through other people's websites, that sort of thing. And the same goes for web accessibility. It might seem troubling for a lot of you that something as important as web accessibility is in the hands of someone who's learnt by trial and error. But for better or worse, that is the nature of the industry. And a lot of the websites we navigate have been built by someone like me. And I guess that's why I wanted to give this talk. If you're a designer or developer who's new to accessibility or doesn't have much experience, then hopefully I can share some knowledge from a familiar perspective. If, on the other hand, you are an expert in accessibility or are directly impacted by it, or the lack of it, then hopefully I can give you some context as to why things are built the way they are. I should stress context, not excuses. Speaking for myself, I tend to learn best from hands-on experience. And I can clearly remember the moment that I truly grasped the importance of web accessibility. So I was taking part in a focus group for a local government website rebuild, and one of the participants, who was blind, was talking about captchas. So yes, as we can see from this image, a very frustrated person with their head in their hands, sweating. Now, this user was discussing all the accessibility issues around captchas, and she very casually said, you know, if you really do have to use a captcha, can you put it at the top of the form? So that way, straight off, I know what I'm getting myself into, so I won't find myself getting to the end of the form, filling a whole bunch of fields, and finding I can't send it. Now, I kind of knew the accessibility issues around captchas, but until someone, an individual, you know, someone with a face, a voice, a personality, articulated it, that it really sunk in. And also sort of the pragmatic nature of her solution made me realise, right, these are real frustrations and these are real world problems. And so accessibility is something that we need to take seriously. So hopefully by giving these 6 key takeaways that I'm about to show you and giving them a voice, a face and a personality will help them resonate that one little bit clearer. Now, enough about me. Let's talk about the project. So, for those who aren't familiar, the Australian Museum is a culture and natural history museum located right here in Sydney. It is Australia's oldest museum, founded in 1827. Yep. And in that time, it's grown to house a collection of over 21 million cultural and scientific objects. If this all makes you feel like visiting, please don't. It's closed until mid-2020. I know, it's for renovation. It's a bit of a tease, I know, but they announced the closure after I proposed the talk. A little bit of background to the website project. So between 2015 and 2017, the Australian Museum did a rebrand, which is just fancy marketing talk for changing the logo. And during that time, the digital team comprised of Megan Lawrence, Jen Cork, and Claude Moline laid down the foundations for a rebuild of their website, which you can visit at australianmuseum.net.au. So they worked with a lot of external agencies and outside consultants, and they did a lot of UX research. Everything from defining audience pathways to content strategy to wireframing, prototyping. They really did the homework. And then in 2018, the baton passed to us to actually design and build the website. Now, early on the project, we mentioned accessibility, and we were pleasantly surprised with the answer, which was, oh yes, we've hired an accessibility consultant. I'd love to tell you that's the standard response, but I'm not going to lie to you. But in the case of the Australian Museum, they were quick off, they were right on the money, and they hired the services of Roger Hudson, who's a veteran of web accessibility with over 20 years experience. And his brief was to audit the website and help us achieve WCAG compliance. So for us, this is great. It was a chance for our work to be rigorously tested by an expert in the field, something which up until then had never been done. You know, what could go wrong? So our approach, I know we've probably all heard this before at this conference, it's only use native HTML, no div and spans disguised as selects and buttons. Use the HTML semantically, so H1s to H6 for headings, no P strong page title, close strong tag, close P tags. To varying degrees of success, it is a content management system which other people can use. And follow WCAG guidelines. Well, it goes without saying, really. So after many months of hard work, we handed over some work to Roger, some sample pages, and waited for his report, which duly came in 75 pages. So, you know, accessibility consultants are anything, a lot of things, but they're definitely thorough. So I'm not going to stand here and read all 75 pages, obviously, but, well, even better, it can be summed up with one sentence, I think, which is, the overall accessibility of the reviewed Australian Museum material is relatively good. However, yeah, I know. Several serious accessibility concerns were identified. Now, look, I'm just speculating here, but I imagine that this can accurately describe a lot of web projects. You know, the good intentions are there, but unless you do a thorough check or a thorough audit, there's bound to be things that slip through the cracks. Now, the good news in our case was that our hard work did pay off, and none of those critical issues were too hard to resolve. I won't have time to talk about everything that was highlighted in the report, but I did want to talk about a few key points and the takeaways I learned from each one. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to seem pretty obvious. But as I mentioned before, I sometimes find that something that's obvious maybe doesn't quite sink in until you relate it to some sort of real-world experience or personal narrative. So hopefully some of what I'm about to say will resonate. And at the very least, you can walk away saying, well, at least I know more than that guy. So let's begin with the positive part of that earlier sentence, this sentence here. So the overall accessibility is relatively good. I never did ask Roger what he meant by relatively. I imagine that in his 20 years of conducting accessibility audits, he's seen some pretty bad things. And it's easy to see why. Browsers let you play pretty fast and loose with markup. And you know, if you're a developer on a tight deadline and a tight budget, it's really easy to get sloppy with your code. But with native HTML, it's pretty clear that your foundations are going to be good and you're going to be baking accessibility in from the start. Now, this is hardly a revelation, I know, but having our work put under this scrutiny gave us confirmation that this was the right approach. It's even become part of our design and development process. I always try at the start of a project, I'll try and build out a website and get it looking decent and understandable and navigable just using HTML and default browser styling. But that's a topic for another talk. So key takeaway number one, use valid native HTML and you will be fine. Probably. So that probably leads us into the first critical issue I want to talk about. Use of field set without corresponding legend tag. Yes, I know, shoot me down in flames. Obviously, for those who aren't familiar, field set is a grouping for related form inputs, and a legend, you can think of a legend as the corresponding title for that group. As you can see here on the slide, a simple screenshot of the more or less default browser styling of a field set with a legend. Now, while these aren't the most common HTML elements. They're certainly not rare. But after 15 years experience, I honestly did not know that not using a legend with a field set was an accessibility issue or an error. Why? Well, it doesn't get flagged as such by the W3C HTML validator. Now, I know that's not the only accessibility issue that doesn't get flagged, but a lot of the accessibility issues, other accessibility issues that don't get flagged, I knew about it. The problem is the problems I didn't know about, the unknown unknowns. So, you know, I know you're probably just saying just use an accessibility checker, and usually I did, but in this case, because we had Roger coming on board, I just assumed he'd be the accessibility checker, and I know that's not the best logic, but anyway, there it is. But thankfully, Roger did catch it, and that leads us on to our key takeaway number 2. Just because your HTML is valid doesn't mean it's accessible. Now, this kind of puts the brakes on the first key takeaway, but it's all right. We're not looking for a magic formula here. So, moving on. Modal dialog windows are inaccessible with some screen readers and browsers. Yeah, I know. I literally put my head in my hands when I saw this. I don't like modals. I think they're a pain, especially when you put forms in them. Unfortunately, clients love them, especially as a place to put forms in. So, as you can see on this screenshot, the sign-up letter for the newsletter for the Australian Museum, that's had to go in a modal, no other way, had to go in a modal. But this critical issue did catch me off guard. I was convinced that we'd done modals right. Why? Well, because we used the modal script from Bootstrap, the most widely used framework in the world. So, key takeaway number 3. Just because something is widely used doesn't mean it's accessible. Now, before you would take this as condemnation of Bootstrap, I should point out that for a variety of reasons we're using an older version of Bootstrap, Bootstrap 3. The latest stable release, version 4, has improved a lot of accessibility issues. Please don't think that I'm hating on Bootstrap. You know, the ultimate responsibility is down to me, who didn't check his work. And while I think all frameworks should strive for accessibility, you know, ultimate responsibility should lie with the humans. But in the case of the Australian Museum, I did a bit of research and looked around for the various modal scripts, and they all had one quirk or another, and there's very little consistency between their behaviour. So, like I said, modals are a pain. I ended up using the script from the W3C. It just seemed fairly lightweight and robust, and in the testing it was the least quirky, and you know, it's from the W3C, so it's obviously under a lot of scrutiny and exposure, but you know, just because something is widely used doesn't mean it's accessible. So if any of you do know of any issues, please let me know, and maybe let the W3C know. Now, on to the next critical issue. Focus styles, sometimes hard to discern. Now, before you all yell, for goodness sake, don't remove the focus styles. We didn't. No, on the Australian Museum website, it was a different issue. Part of our build for the website was that certain high-level pages could have the colour palette changed. This was an extension of the digital brand of the Australian Museum, which called for a very varied colour palette for their visual communication. And so the issue was that sometimes content editors would change a background colour on a page, and that would make the focus styles, our defined focus styles, hard to discern. But this wasn't so much a structural issue. It was more a case of providing guidelines to the content editors and making them aware of the pitfalls, the accessible pitfalls that could take place. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying just leave the default focus styles alone. And I'd like to, I really do. But to be honest, and we almost got away with it on the Australian Museum launch, but the one reason that we can't, at least in my experience, is those blue halo-y focus styles around links and buttons on Chrome on Windows. Yeah, like I said, we almost got to launch, but then they saw that, and it's blue, nah, not on brand, can't have that. So, yeah, so in our case, we had sort of anticipated this, and so we just put in some defined focus styles, a simple neutral grey outline, and everyone was happy. We had the usual question, can we just remove them? To which we answered, no. To which they said, why not? To which we said, because accessibility. To which they said, but everyone else does it. Now, to be fair, that didn't happen with the Australian Museum. They understood it straight away, but that back and forth is quite common. Recently finished a project where the client and the designers tried about 3 or 4 times during the web build to, can we get rid of those grey boxes? Luckily, I've sort of worked out a script over the years, and a bit of a spiel I can tell them. So a lot of clients give up after a while now. Come and see me afterwards if you want to know what that script is. So key takeaway, number 4, be prepared to break common accessibility bad habits. Now, moving on, I want to talk about specific features of the Australian Museum website. So first up, the main navigation. Now, it goes without saying that on any website, main navigation is pretty important, and it goes without saying that if your main navigation isn't accessible, well then, you're really starting on the wrong path. This is especially true of the Australian Museum, which has a lot of content. We're talking 20,000 pages worth of content. If you think that's a lot, it used to be 80,000. Thankfully, they hired a really good content strategist named Elle Geraghty, and she sort of trimmed it down to just 20,000. And she came up with an information architecture where the main navigation was divided into 3 top-level categories. And all content would fit into one of those categories inside 3 sub-levels of 3 submenus. Now, within those submenus, there was huge variation. Some only maybe had a couple of links, one had up to 19. So getting that sort of format into something that was visually appealing and accessible was going to take a bit of work. And straight away we thought, look, we're not going to be able to find a script that's out there or something that's already been done. We're going to have to do it from scratch. If we'd used something that had already been done, would probably be a lot of tweaking around the edges and would have turned ugly really quickly. So much better to start it from scratch and build our own navigation with accessibility baked in. So we started off a series of nested ULs. That's all it is, really. And for items that had to open up a submenu, we used a button. For items that had to go to a separate page, we had to use a link, which what I learned on Tuesday is may or may not be the right way of doing it, but still. And from there, we created our own custom JavaScript to add and remove classes based on user interactions, which were all via the keyboard. No hover interactions would trigger anything. And then CSS, a lot of it. And it's a bit hard to explain the navigation, in words, so do go check it out and let me know what you think. The result from the audit was largely successful. I was expecting at least 1 or 2 critical issues, but we didn't get any critical issues. It did flag some issues. There was the potential for confusion because we weren't trapping focus. So for sighted keyboard users or mouse users, it might be a bit tricky. But we've since resolved that. Can still be a bit more work done, especially in regards to mobile, how we're doing that, but also improving ARIA labeling. But the point wasn't so much that we got it perfect. It was more a case of any issues that did come up, they were fairly easy and quick for us to solve because we were working with something that we had built up from scratch. We weren't tied down with legacy things, or we weren't having to find workarounds through, things that we couldn't change. So key takeaway number 5, aim to build complex features from the ground up. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, a key aspect of the Australian Museum website was developing a component-driven content management system. That is, rather than relying on page templates with a predefined structure that you just go in and fill out, content editors could build out a page however they chose, picking components from a library. Now, based on this concept, we provided the option to divide a page into page sections. At the top of a page, we would output a list of skip links to each of those page sections, a sort of table of contents list, if you will. Then at the end of each of those page sections, we'd have a skip link to take you back up to that table of contents list. The idea being to allow screen reader users to move around the page fairly quickly and easily, which is very useful, particularly if you had a page with a lot of content, which a lot of the pages on the Australian Museum website do have. So, sounds great, doesn't it? No, it wasn't. Turns out having the same back to table of contents skip link at the end of each section was really irritating. And it wasn't even that clear that the links in that table of contents would take you to another part of the page. Some users thought it was taking them to another page entirely. And so for me, at least, it was a case of trying to do too much and just getting in the way. I still think in principle it could work, but it needs a lot more thought and engagement with users of assistive technology, as opposed to just me making assumptions, really. So key takeaway, number 6, just because it's accessible doesn't mean it isn't annoying. So just to sum up the key takeaway points. Number 1, use valid native HTML and you will be fine, probably. Number 2, just because your HTML is valid doesn't mean it's accessible, because the W3C validator is not infallible. 3, just because something is widely used doesn't mean it's accessible, because even a framework like Bootstrap can get it wrong. 4, be prepared to break common accessibility bad habits. We've all got bad habits, and you can be sure at least one person is going to ask you about those focus styles. 5, aim to build complex features from the ground up, so that you can give yourself the flexibility and control to implement accessibility properly. And 6, just because something is accessible doesn't mean it isn't annoying. Because funnily enough, web developers and designers who make assumptions don't always get it right. Now, none of this is groundbreaking, I know, and you probably already know most of it. But hopefully illustrating these points in the context of a real-world project and giving them a face, a voice, a personality, even if it is just my own, helps them resonate that little bit clearer. Now, just to finish up, I don't want to give you the impression that the Australian Museum website is perfect from an accessibility point of view. It clearly isn't. Roger did not do an audit on all 20,000 pages, I can assure you that. There's there's constantly content editors are creating new pages, editing existing ones. There's a whole bunch of things, so it'll be a continual process. So if you do come across any issues, please let us know. As an institution, the Australian Museum does take accessibility seriously. They have people in roles whose job is specifically to improve it. They have an accessibility steering committee that meets regularly with outside consultants and advocates to help achieve that. So if you reach out, your voice will be heard. You can email Megan Lawrence. So she's Manager of Digital Experience, and you can email her at megan.lawrence, that's LAWRENCE, at austmus, that's AUSTMUS.gov.au. And you can also email me, Fabian McDonald, so that's Fabian, Fabian, at interaction.net.au. Now, I know it's common at this stage of talk to put up the socials, but I'm not really on social media. I hardly ever use it. The only thing I really use is I'm in a fruit and veg co-op, so I kind of have to use Facebook just for that. But hey, here is my mobile number. I know. We're a pretty small community here, and I've always found it very welcoming and friendly. So 0432 343 740.
And we won't put that on social media, thanks, guys.
If you do want to reach out, do it the old-fashioned way. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Fabian.
Do we have time for questions?
Thank you. We do have some time for questions. Not very much time, but we've probably got time for one question.
Coming. Brendan?
Thanks. Hi, Fabian. Great session. And
thank you.
I just have to ask, being that it's a museum page, how did you go with the labelling of your alt text on your images?
So all labelling of alt text is handled by the CMS, and the part of our build was getting integrations with their image management system that they already have called PhotoWare, which had to talk to the CMS, and that carried over all the various tags that are on the image. So alt tags, but also captions, copyright info, a whole bunch of stuff. I'd like to tell you that the alt tag labeling gets done effectively and consistently across all images. The truth is, because there's so many different departments in the Australian Museum and so many different people, there's the marketing department, there's all the research departments. So I imagine the tools are there for effective alt text labeling of images. How that gets done in practice, I think you're likely to find a lot of variance depending on who's managing the images. But do reach out to them if you find that there is a problem, because they do have someone, a pal, who is responsible for media and photo management. And just speaking to him, he takes it seriously. So, like I said, yes, I can't give a clear answer that, yes, it's all fine. I'm sure there are cases where it's not fine. I can say they tend to be very good with the image caption, but caption and alt text is not the same thing. It's sometimes hard to explain that to clients who aren't so familiar with web development or accessibility. But certainly the captions look all great. Right.
Great. Thank you very much, Fabian.
No problem.